This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out, proudly sponsored by Spartans Law. And this is podcast number 81 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast. With me, I'm delighted to be joined by my right hand man, my good friend, Mr. Mohsin Gulshir, aka Ron. Ron, it's been a very long time since we've done a podcast. It's been a long time since we've sat down on a Sunday evening and discussed the current boxing scene. As I said, it's been a while. How have you been since we last did a podcast? I've not seen you for a few weeks as well.
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It has been far too long, and hopefully we can make these kind of podcasts more frequent in the coming weeks. We've got a lot of exciting boxing events coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, just a quick update in regards to Lights Out. As the followers and the subscribers are aware, we haven't been as active as we would have hoped to have been over sort of like the last year. But I can assure all the diehard Lights Out fans and the followers and the subscribers, we are back now. We'll be doing a weekly podcast and we'll be hoping to bring you some exciting content. Um, for those who watch the Lights Out Boxing podcast, obviously we like to start off with a quick fire question, but it's very unfortunate that our first podcast back after nearly a year, we're going to be talking about the death of a British boxing legend, which is Ricky the Hitman Hatton, who tragically passed away just 2 weeks ago in his home. Ricky was unfortunately found dead. Shocking news to not just British boxing, but also the boxing world. Yeah, very, very sad. Obviously, we grew up watching Ricky Hatton, and obviously we're gonna base this podcast on Ricky himself. But there will truly only ever will be one Ricky Hatton. Ron, how was you feeling when you heard the news? Because I was absolutely devastated when I found out.
Just like you, man, just completely shocked. Didn't want to believe it. I was hoping it was like a hoax or something. You know, he was a larger than life character. Um, I think you put it perfectly there. British hero, boxing hero. I started watching boxing. I got into boxing in the late '90s, um, and got the Nazim Hamid and Lennox Lewis era. Hatton was kind of coming in early 2000s. Um, you know, and what a fan following he had. He fought with his heart. He was your everyday man. Um, great loss to boxing, to his family, of course, condolences to his son and his obviously his wife. I don't know if he was still with his partner, but and his family as well. Of course, it must be devastating. He was only 46, 47 years out of age.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I think I can relate to everything you've just said.
mm,
It's absolutely tragic news. As you said, you got into boxing in sort of like the late 90s. I mean, I think what comes to mind with Ricky Hatton, one word that does come to my mind is fan base. I was a huge fan of
oh,
Ricky Hatton.
blue, yeah.
It's just so sad, as I mean, this was a guy who fought last year in an exhibition against Barrera. This was a guy who had a fight in December as well. Obviously, we don't know the cause of death, and we're not going to go into that. But um, British boxing itself won't be the same without Ricky Hatton. That's for sure. I mean, I had the privilege on a number of occasions to interview Ricky Hatton and sit down and talk to him about the Mayweather fight, and obviously we know he's trained the likes of Tommy Fury and Nathan Gorman over the years. His son
Mm.
Campbell was also a boxer who's announced his retirement. Um, you
He
know,
was also in the corner of Tyson Fury, right?
yes, he played a massive part in Tyson's corner.
Mm.
He was there in the corner for the Deontay Wilder fight, the first one.
Mm.
He's left behind a phenomenal legacy. Like I said to you, I mean, if you ask me one word that comes to mind when you speak about Ricky Hatton, it's the fan base he built. We're truly blessed to have some great fighters in Britain right now who have got some solid fan bases. But and this is no disrespect to any other fighter, I don't think you'll ever get a fan base better than Ricky Hatton's. I mean, you only have to look back at the Mayweather fight. I mean,
I was going to
th-
say that,
there
yeah.
was no secret that after what round five, six, it was one-way traffic, but that fan base did not stop even after the fight when, Mayweather stopped him. What was it in round 11? They carried on singing, they carried on chanting, and I think the commentator at the time in during the fight he said, "What was it? What was the attendance? 3,000 British fans? Absolutely no chance. I mean, it was like you was at an
Mm.
away day watching a football match. Just that
Mm.
fan base he had was phenomenal, Ron. And I just think that that's my
Mm.
most fondest memory of Ricky Hatton is how good his fan base was.
Put the fight to the side, the weigh-in. I mean, do you
Oh
remember that?
yes,
That was
absolutely.
20,000. British fans singing that place down, and Mayweather had them in his palm of his hand. What he was saying to them, who do you think is going to win?
I remember that.
I mean, I don't know what Mayweather knew what hit him. I don't think he ever faced, like the opposition fan to like that. And
Mm,
I don't think anyone who commands that much of a following like Ricky Hatton did. I think it was 20,000 fans that went out to see him. Obviously, not all of them could get tickets to the fight, but that kind of tells you about him as a person, as a character, what he was like, not only in the ring. He gave his heart and soul when he fought, but what he did outside the ring as well. He could relate. The every man could relate to him. His personality is, he always want to be. I mean, from what stories I've heard about him, always being up for a drink, down to his local. He wasn't too big for his boots or anything like that, or too big, too popular to kind of spend time. So that kind of, and you've had the pleasure of kind of interviewing him, and he's never turned you down for an interview, or
never,
he's
no.
never, I mean, so, oh,
It
yeah,
is. It's
such.
very sad. I mean, we can talk about. We are going to talk about the iconic build up to the Mayweather fight and the weigh in
Mm,
and Mayweather turning up to Manchester in a Man United shirt, knowing that Ricky was a true
mm,
Manchester City
blue,
fan.
yeah,
I just want to read through a few stats of Ricky's boxing career. I mean, 45-3 with 32 KOs, a former British champion, a former two-weight world champion. I mean,
mm,
one of my favorite British fights of all time is going to be that fight with John Faxon in 2000, and then 5 years later, that iconic night where he become world champion when he beat Costa Zoo, and the ferocious body power he had. I mean, I still remember that knockout against Castillo in 2007, which sort of paved the way for the Mayweather fight to happen. Ron, it's very difficult to sort of pin a favorite memory of Ricky Hatton, but if you had to, what would you say was your most fondest memory of Ricky Hatton as a boxer?
I think it was the coming of him when he. I think you mentioned that fight, that Costa Zoo fight. I wasn't fortunate enough to have Sky Sports back then. I'm sure
I
it was a
don't think
must.
we all were on.
No, but listening to it on the radio, and Costa Zoo was unbeatable. I don't know if he was undefeated, but Costa Zoo's been with the very best, and to make him quit on his stool, that's saying something, man. For Ricky, I can't remember how old he was. He was quite young and quite raw to be going in with a seasoned kind of pro like Costa Zoo. And he fought his heart out in that fight.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I was just listening to Frank Warren talking about it as well. Wow, what a journey that must have been. You mentioned that the John Thaxton fight. From that kid there to kind of winning a world title, achieving his dreams, and everyone kind of felt they won that world title with him. Everyone really got behind him. With Ricky Hatton. Um, and you mentioned his resume with 3 losses, and he lost okay, that last loss, obviously, I'm not going to count that because he was towards the end of his career. And but the two losses, other than that, who are they? I mean,
Two of the greatest fighters of our generation.
yeah. So you can't knock that. If you're going to lose to anybody, is the best in your division. The old time greats, and yeah, he never disappointed. He his fans, and
Do you know, I mean, obviously, like I said, right now we've got a great proper British fighters coming through.
yeah,
Hamza Shiraz, Adam Azim, there's some really, really top talent, in British boxing right now. Obviously Moses Atoma as well, another great fighter who's going to go on and have a great career. I think looking back at it, I think we were truly blessed to have witnessed a Ricky Hatton journey. You mentioned the comeback fight against Senchenko. I
this
believe
is the
it's
one. Yeah,
Senchenko. Yeah, yeah. Just watching him break down after the fight. It was a moment that I'll always remember. For weeks, I was actually looking forward to that fight. He'd not fought since 2008, 2009, since obviously that loss to Manny Pacquiao. And that was a bad knockout, but he got back in the ring and he gave British boxing fans that sort of like last hurrah, and it didn't go his way. And I just remember him breaking down, and you just kind of knew that was the end. But that's not the Ricky Hatton I'm going to remember. I mean, I think for me, the Ricky Hatton that I'm going to remember is the Mayweather build up. You mentioned the weigh-in. I was in Pakistan at the time, and I don't know how, but obviously this time. Right in what was the fight in 2007? We never had social media. We couldn't go onto Twitter to see, clips of the weigh-in or Instagram or TikTok. None of that existed then. I don't know how I was just flicking through the channels and flicking through, and luckily enough, I just managed. I don't know how it just landed on the channel. I can't even. It might have been, I think, Geo Sports, which is one of the main sports channels in Pakistan. It was just a video of them looking at each other and weighing in. Um, I got to watch the fight as well. Again, don't know how. Must have been Geo Sports. And, I truly believed Ricky was going to pull it off that night. And I remember, I think it was what? Was it round one or two when he clipped Mayweather? Mayweather lost his balance.
mm,
And even though he lost his balance, it wasn't a clean shot. The roar of the crowd, that's how powerful
it
this man's
really
fan
got
base
behind
was.
that man.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
And I've always said Mayweather for me is probably one of the greatest fighters of all time. And you just saw after round four, five, six, the class took over. And
levels. Yeah.
even when Ricky was swinging and missing, and when he was getting hit clean and he got knocked out in the end, that fan base did not stop singing. And I don't think you will ever get that in British boxing. I mean, look, Amir Khan had a great fan base, no doubt about that. Amir Khan had a terrific fan base. Johnny Fisher's got a great following. Like I said, Adam Azim, Hamza Shiraz. Tyson Fury, I mean, if you remember Euro 2016 in France when he's buying all the Jaeger bombs for the England fans in France, I mean, but for me, Ricky Hatton, you know, I watched a fan do an interview on Sky Sports last week, and he said with Ricky Hatton, and this guy is a Manchester City fan, and he turned around and he said, "Our away days were Ricky Hatton's fights. They were our away days.
Mhm.
The atmosphere of a Ricky Hatton fight was similar to a Manchester City game away." Um, and it's just sad, it's really sad to sort of get your head around it. I mean, like I said, he's meant to schedule to fight in December. I believe it was an exhibition. Um, and you've heard obviously all the promoters talk about mental health, and you heard Amir Khan do an interview on IFL TV, and he spoke about how he wished Ricky had just picked up the phone and called him. And there's a lot of people coming forward now saying that promoters and managers, trainers have got to start doing more, Ron. We know how much of a difficult sport this is, Ron. I mean, you're a psychologist teacher yourself. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've looked at mental health. What's the sport of boxing got to do to make sure not only just
Mm.
current fighters, but past fighters, people that have been in the game that are, that have had a career in boxing. What have we got to do to make sure that those involved in this sport, past or present, are being looked after and that
Mm.
there is something out there for them to turn to?
Well, that was Ricky's thing that he was really kind of advocating for. there's going to be a life for boxers after the ring.
After the ring, yeah.
And that was his biggest fight. When he does, you mentioned that last loss of his Devichenko.
Sanchenko
Um,
or Devchenko's.
my apologies. Yeah, I think he was upset that he'd lost the fight, but he was probably more upset about what would life look like, and that was probably a lot of his struggles, kind of dealing with that, and obviously it was well documented. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bring this up, but about what in the media about addiction as well.
Yeah.
Obviously Ricky Hatton kind of had his demons outside the ring with alcohol, with drugs, and I guess it's a coping mechanism. So I hope we can learn something from this, from the loss of Ricky Hatton, or what he was advocating for, what he was really kind of fighting for. About boxers should be taking the aftercare after they leave. What's the plan for them? You mentioned about Ricky White he stayed in the sport as well with his coaching kind of commitments, not only to his son. You mentioned some really good fighters there that he was involved with. We mentioned about Tyson Fury and that being in that corner. I looked at that corner. I was like, that's a good corner, and having a man like him, and it was really nice to see his face around around the sport. And that's where you probably met him as well,
Hmm.
where he was cornering or coaching some, fight up and coming fighters, with his along with his brother. They're a fighting family, aren't they?
Yeah.
Um, Matthew
Matthew
Hatton as
Hatton, yeah,
well.
was a good fighter.
Good fight, obviously, brilliant fighter. He fought at a high level as well. Fought against Canelo. So mental health is a massive issue, and I don't think Ricky had his challenges, and I don't think he'll be the last of them. There'll be other fighters who will also come across this. We know Tyson's challenge with mental health has been well documented, and he's been advocating for people to talk out and reach out and seek um, seek support. Um, so I don't know. I think that's something I'd like to see more in with boxers after they finish their career. What next?
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Ron. I mean, I remember doing an interview with Johnny Nelson, and he told me when he was with Barry Hearn, I believe it was Johnny Nelson, he said to me
Mm,
that what Barry did with my career, and it was probably the best thing he ever did, is he would take out like a percentage of my pay and he would keep it to one side. And Johnny said the reason why he did that was because Barry said to Johnny, I believe it was Johnny Nelson that I did this interview with, and Barry turned around to him and said, because once your career finishes, I want you to have something, which is why I'm keeping this money for you. It's for your benefit. Um, you know, you and I both know, Ron, how difficult this sport is. It's probably the most hardest sport in the world. These guys, these fighters are in
mm,
camps for what, 10 to 12 weeks. They're training 2, 3 times a day. I mean, I know there's obviously fitness checks and physical checks done on fight week, but is there someone out there that's speaking to these fighters as, fight week approaches? Are these people sitting down with mental health advocates just to see if they're in a good place? What's being
mm,
offered to fighters that are after retiring? Do you know what I mean? I mean, these fighters, I mean, I say one thing, I give credit to any guy that fights, that is a professional boxer, because, fight week itself, it's a long fight week. I've attended plenty with
mm,
lights out and trying to get content in and, reporting. These fighters are having to do a dozen of interviews a day. They're having to, do a weigh-in, do press conferences. These type of things, Ron, it takes its toll on fighters. And obviously the fight itself, preparation for the fight, after the fight, how's a fighter going to recover from a bad loss? I mean, what happens to a fighter when they've been in camp for 12 weeks and the week of the fight, the opponent pulls out? I mean, are there people out there? Are there mental health advocates out there? Are there people out there that are doing enough for these fighters? Are we looking after these fighters? Yes, these fighters need to get paid, and yes, their health and safety is a massive priority.
mm.
But are these fighters, have they got someone to speak to? not just current fighters, but also fighters from the past. And at some point, Ron, do you think we need to start looking at this as an option where we're bringing in people during fight week and after careers are finished, where these guys are getting spoken to and getting the right checks, and they're also looked at and as if hopefully they're in a good place.
You'd like to think so, I mean, a boxer's life is quite short, isn't it? It's
Absolutely, yeah.
blink and you'll miss it. And you've mentioned about how it could be one bad punch that could end shorten a career. One punch from your in your eye, and you could lose vision, and people kind of leave that career behind. And what comes of them? Is there a good aftercare program? I like that did you mention about Barry Hearn was keeping some of his fight fees
Yeah,
for Johnny Nelson? So that sounds like a good kind of like a pension kind of fee. I'm thinking of pensions there. They're taken care of, and some of these boxers, and it's quite sad. They fight for far too long. How much money do you need to make? But I guess we when we think about boxers, we think about the elite level fighters, who are earning the millions and half a million, or being on these Sky Sports box office kind of events or the zone events, and they're getting these big purses. What about these, kind of the lower level fighters, who are fighting for the area titles and the British titles? How much are they earning, and is it enough for them to kind of pack it in and kind of say, okay, I think it needs to be at all levels, not just the elite top level fighters. You've obviously done interviews with local fighters like Kay Prosper, and who's the other one?
Linus Adofia.
Linus Adofia. My apologies. Yeah, did you say one of them's is it Linus
Linus is
who's
retired, yeah.
Linus retired? It'd be good to kind of find out from him, like what does it look like for him? Because he's fought at a good level as well, but obviously not to the level that Ricky Hatton was at. But what happens? Is there something in place? I'd be very keen to know. I'm not going to pretend to know. Um, just hoping they're being taken care of. And think about they're in this hurt game where they're taking punches and blows to the head. So that's going to have an impact on possibly mental well-being later on in the future. It might not be instant, but it could catch up with him later on in life.
Absolutely. I agree with what you just said there, Ron. And hopefully uh,
Mm.
there is an option out there for these fighters because it's a lonely sport as well. And as you said, boxing could be a very short career, and we just hope that there is that option out there for these fighters and ex-fighters to reach out to someone if they are in a bad place. And there's that saying, it's okay not to be okay.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, our thoughts, condolences, and prayers go out to Ricky's family. You know, um, it's a sad loss for the boxing world, and of
Mm.
course, it's also a sad loss for those that were close to him. And I would, if Ricky was here right now, I would personally would want to thank him for what he gave us as boxing fans. Ron, I mean, if you had the opportunity to say anything to Ricky right now, what would it be?
Tell people your story. People want to hear it. Like how tough it is, and you know, talking about it. He was very open and honest about his struggles with mental health, as is Tyson Fury. And still we live in this day and age where men are afraid to talk about their battles with mental health. They see it as a sign of weakness. Please don't. Kind of reach out. Talk to a good friend or someone. And open up. Seek services. There's lots out there. There's lots of men's groups that you can be involved with. Get involved with something. Keep your mind occupied. I think and it was really good to see Ricky kind of still being involved with boxing despite his challenges. Um, I mean, obviously people like Tyson Fury are an inspiration from what he was to where he is now. The challenges, trials, and tribulations that he's been through. So that's what I would say. I loved his honesty. Where he did. I don't know if you listened to his interview with Simon Jordan. The William Hill one. Do you know what I'm
Mm.
talking about? Did you
Tyson
listen to
Fury's
that?
interview.
No, no, no. Sorry, Ricky Hatton's interview with Simon Jordan,
Yes,
and
up
he's talking
front
about
with Simon Jordan.
yes,
Yes.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, William Hill.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was blown away by the honesty
Hmm.
and the ugly side of boxing as well. The after, after boxing, that kind of highlighted a lot of things. You think that this guy's made a lot of money, and that's it. He can say, swan off to the sunset and live happily ever after. But little did we know that he had these struggles. After moving away from the sport.
Well, once again, our condolences go out to Ricky's family. Our thoughts and prayers are with them at this tragic time, and there truly will ever only be one Ricky the Hitman Hatton. That's obviously all we've got time for on today's podcast. This was a podcast based on a tribute to Ricky the Hitman Hatton himself. To the viewers out there, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and make sure you keep up to date with us on all the social media platforms. The podcast today is also available on all the Apple podcasts such as Spotify and all the other ones. So if you want to listen to this in an audio podcast, links are going to be below in the description. Ron, an absolute pleasure. I look forward to catching up with you next week. And to the fans out there, we can assure you we will be back with more podcasts and more lights out content. It's exciting times going forward. And hopefully, Ron lives up to his promise that he leads podcast number 100, which I've been reminding him of over the last few
How far
years.
are we from that? Talking of that.
19 more away to go, Ron.
Okay. Okay. Well, we
19
did
more
have a
to
year's
go.
break, so I think if I hadn't got enough time to prepare, I've got so
19
hopefully I
more
will.
on 19 as in the position Man United are going to finish this season.
Oh dear.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for your time and thank you for watching podcast 81 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast.